in some real science, but I like the fiction part too. Yeah, like, and I've said this before, and Dan, I know you're more of a Star Wars guy. Like, for me, like, as much as I do enjoy Star Wars, I mean, the answer to everything that happens is the Force. Like, oh, how'd you do that? Oh, the Force.
Yeah,
Oh,
it all comes back to the
okay.
Force.
Oh my gosh, you did this amazing thing. How did you? The Force. Okay.
Let me guess, the Force.
Let me guess,
Yeah.
the Force did that.
Yeah.
Whereas in Star Trek, it's like, how did that happen? Well, you see, first I took this, blah-blah-blah generator, and then I reversed the polarity, and then I pressed this button, and then the other thing happened. Oh, yeah, makes sense to me. Like,
No,
so
for sure. I think it's
way of approaching things.
Yeah, and I think that's debatable too, in the fact that there is a lot of expanded universe. I'm talking about Star Wars. There's expanded universe stuff where they will explain those things later. But on the surface, you're right. It's all about the Force, and the Force revolves around us. And I do like the fact that Star Trek does take that science and kind of break it down for you in the middle of the show, so you do know what they're talking about to some degree, anyway. I that is one thing that I noticed right off the bat with the show in comparison. Not that I'm comparing the two, but I do appreciate that, because it's not just so, well, this is why. They're telling you it's this, and we're going to explain why this is to you, as opposed to you just having to accept it. It creates more thought for me. You know what I mean? It definitely gives me more to think about and chew on than, say, a Star Wars movie or something like that. I know someone's going to hate me for saying that, but damn it, it's the truth.
Well, I watch Doctor Who, and the Doctor will come up with some sort of technobabble kind of stuff about things. But occasionally, it's just like, yeah, well, that's it. That's just how it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, no, I do enjoy both, because sometimes they will bring out an actual science thing, where they will say, well, because of this law of physics, we're able to do this other thing. And I do enjoy when, like, actual scientists, in today's world will look at stuff like that and go, actually, yeah, that's theoretically possible. Like, I enjoy that kind of stuff. And I also enjoy the made-up stuff. Like, Katie on Pulse, sure, why not? Like, let's call it that. Because the whole idea of, like, even an android that could, being artificially intelligent, I mean, we're not terribly far away from that, to be honest. I mean,
God, that's scary.
I know. It is a bit... I mean, do you want Skynet? This is how you get Skynet. I mean, That's what people say. But, I mean, we're not terribly far away from some form of artificial intelligence. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I think the strides that they're making in actual science and in robotics today is shocking. The things that they're doing. I mean... It's kind of exciting. I mean, it's scary, but it's kind of exciting to see stuff like that happening, like in real science.
Not even necessarily just robotics in general. Like, just artificial intelligence could just be like a computer algorithm that learns and can spit things back. Because I listened to a podcast today. I believe it was an episode of 99% Invisible, which is about design. I think that's what it was. I can't remember. I listened to a lot of podcasts in a day. And it was talking about that kind of thing, about making a artificial intelligence that sounds human and can write like apparently someone had algorithm that could take just a little chunk of information and it could write like a whole story about it, and it sounded like someone wrote it and it come up with facts that weren't even in the little description that they gave the computer, and they were like, we're just gonna destroy this because it could be bad.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, not to go off on a crazy tangent or anything, but I was just reading something, I think it was just on Facebook actually, but it was like, someone had taken this algorithm and they had this computer basically watch a ton of Hallmark movies and like the holiday movies, and then write their own. They extrapolate all the information and write their own movie. It's just insane that technology is there. I mean, some of it doesn't make sense, but it shows that we are at the gateway. And it's not, like Rebecca's saying, it's not too far off in the future where AI is going to be a real palpable thing. And I mean, who knows how we're going to navigate that? You know what I mean? This is I don't mean to come off in a doomsday fashion, but it is something that does sort of frighten me as well as intrigue me too, because I just don't understand this stuff. You know, I mean, they're taking, like you're saying, science fiction. You know, they're taking this real science and they're just putting a tail on the end of it in these shows. But it's amazing how it parallels reality now. Mm-hmm. These things were way in advance. You know what I mean? I mean, think about that. You had Captain Kirk talking into this little comm and communicating, and suddenly we do have things like that. It's insane how I don't know, Roddenberry. I don't know. He was a wizard, perhaps.
Maybe he was.
You're a
wizard, Harry.
You're a wizard, Roddenberry.
You're a wizard, Roddenberry.
We're going to give you something that looks like a flip phone to talk into, but nobody knows what a flip phone is.
Yes.
Unlike George Lucas, who's going to give you a lady's razor. I talk about that all the time. I'm sorry.
It's true.
That's my favorite.
But if you think about it, like, think about the tech that they use in Next Generation. Like, you see all the time, you know, they might access something in the main computer and then it's displayed here on my little computer on my desk. Well, is that any different than downloading something from the internet onto your laptop? It's no different. Or when they then pick up a little pad and they download the information, well, that's iPads today.
Or
crazy.
Like screen mirroring and all that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, video conferencing. Now, of course, you know, yes, in Star Trek, they Skype across
By
space.
the way, Skype, we mention you a lot. We use you for this podcast.
This episode
Think
of the
about
podcast
that.
is brought to you by Skype. Skype. For when you're too cheap to call somebody. But please give us money, Skype. So, yeah, I mean, so, like, a lot of the, I mean, and of course, like, the idea of, like, transporter technology and, like, stuff like that, I think that's probably never going to happen, only because the idea of what the transporter actually does to you is way beyond anything that people are doing today. But, like, do I think that humans will eventually figure out how to leave the solar system? Absolutely. Like, within, like, and leave the solar system and not have to put themselves into, like, cryogenic sleep because it takes, you know, 60 years to get to Pluto. I think we will get there. I really do. I think it'll happen. And from there, like, who knows what's in our capability. Like, maybe there are Vulcans out there. I really hope so. So, yeah, like, some of the stuff is way out there, but then I think some of the stuff is much more attainable than maybe
it was
20 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so yeah, science fiction, I love it. I love when they make stuff up. I love when it's real. I love all of it. So, okay, back to the planet. Riker and Worf are still on the world's worst nature hike where they're just walking around. They do encounter 3 Borg, and they do see the compound finally, but they are quickly surrounded by the Borg drones and are taken down to some caves, which are clearly a set that was built for this show. But, you know, we'll pretend they're real. And I know, I'm sorry to burst your bubble there.
Ruin it for everybody, Rebecca.
Jeez,
great. Nice job.
And in the caves, we finally see Hugh. Hugh is down there. Of course, Riker and Worf recognize him right away. And Hugh asks them, hasn't the crew of the Enterprise done enough damage already? So, not exactly a happy reunion here. And in the next scene, we find out why Hugh feels this way. He basically blames the Enterprise for everything that's happened to them. So when Hugh went back to his ship, and he relinked with the Borg, of course, now they all became individuals because Hugh was an individual. So they were linked, but instead of everybody feeling and talking the same thing, all the voices were different. And people had different ideas about what they wanted to do and where they wanted to go. And they couldn't function. So Hugh says some of the Borg fought each other, some shut themselves down, some starved to death because they couldn't figure out how to feed themselves. So, because there was no one telling them to regenerate, go to sleep. So it was total chaos. They're lost, they're frightened, and here comes Lore. Lore shows up and says, I'm your savior. I am going to make you a superior race, fully artificial. And if this isn't Adolf Hitler telling Germany after World War I, I'm going to make you the master race, I mean, I don't know what is.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Pretty clear. Draw a line from A to B. And I mean, they've set Lore up as this Hitler character. And these are these disillusioned, confused, lost, angry Borg who now have a leader who says, I will make you the superior race.
I will feed the hungry. I will lead the lost. Just follow me.
Hello. I mean, this is just do what I say. Yes, there will be some sacrifices. So some will have to give up something. Well, what are they giving up? Well, Lore is doing much like Germany, Nazi Germany also did, experiments on these Borg, and it's left them completely brain damaged. And we see two Borg that are basically, I mean, they're just beyond help. They're completely destroyed as far as individuals. Like, they're just sitting there kind of shaking their heads, and there's no person in there anymore. Like, so Lore's experimentation has been pretty terrible. Hugh then asks about his friend, Geordi. And Riker's like, yeah, about Geordi. Guess where he is? In the compound, bro. Like,
funny you should ask that question.
Funny. What a coincidence. And he's like, yeah, he's in the compound. Like, maybe you could help us, like, get in there and rescue our people. And Hugh tells them he won't help them, that he says, I can't risk my group here being discovered, and he won't help them in any way. He won't help their rescue, but Riker's like, all right, can you at least show us how to get in, and we'll take it from there. I really thought like this was one of the most important key scenes in this episode, because it really gives us the full explanation of how Lore sort of came into power over these Borg, how he was able to take probably the scariest villain in the Star Trek universe and turn them into his puppets. It's a pretty key moment in the episode.
For sure. Just preying on the weak.
Yeah.
Well, so also not just the weak, but they're making those that aren't as weak feel weak, and then preying on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'll have a lot of feelings about this that do not pertain to Star Trek. So people are terrible, and so is Lore. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for coming to Brooke's TED Talk. People are terrible. I don't disagree.
Nor do I.
So, back in the compound, Geordi is on some kind of exam table. Data does an impression of Picard. He mimics Picard's voice, tells him, we're getting out of here. And, of course, Geordi's like, all right, hurry up, let's go. And then Data's like, aha, fooled you. I'm working on my jokes. How's it going? I'm working some new material. What do you think?
This is so cruel from someone who
Isn't
was
it?
his best friend.
It's incredibly cruel. Geordi is blind. He's helpless. He's strapped to a table, ready to have God knows what done to him. And then Data pretends to be Picard to make him think like they can escape.
Yeah, to give him some hope to just crush it.
Terrible. It's extremely cruel.
Yes.
What Data does here.
I do like, though, that Geordi says to him, when you get back to being you, if you ever do, you're gonna, don't do something you'll regret. Kind of thing. Like, because he's just trying. And Geordi is like talking about things that, that they did together, and you remember that time, and it's just, it's so sad.
Yeah, we get that a little bit later on in the episode, but for sure, like,
sorry.
no, it's okay. No, but it is another scene of Geordi on the exam table and Data doing things to him. And again, Geordi can't see. Geordi he cannot see what's happening around him to him. He's relying on his sense of sound, his sense of touch. So, like, imagine if